Hey, welcome back, everybody. Happy Saturday. Hope we're having a wonderful start to our weekend out there and hopefully enjoying some of the nicer weather back home that we're kind of seeing funneling into much of the East Coast. But unfortunately, things are changing very quickly in the Atlantic Ocean, and a lot of today's video is going to be focused on that. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. We are trying to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of hurricane season, and I think we won't have any problem getting there, but I need your help to get there. So again, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Also like the video. That really helps the channel out and really helps this video reach more people. And we can kind of get them, in the groove of things so there's no surprises should a storm develop and cause problems here within really the next 7 to 10 days. So again, things moving pretty quickly here, but again, I think we'll be up to date and have the greatest information here with our latest weather models. And of course, I'll keep you updated with that. Now, again, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Gerald. I am a meteorology major at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. I hope you enjoy the channel. If you're a regular, thanks again for coming back. It means the world to me. With all that said, though, let's go ahead and start talking some weather here because, again, we do have a lot to discuss in today's video. So, taking a look at satellite imagery over the entire Atlantic basin, a couple things to note here. But the big one I'm going to go ahead and circle right now, and it's this kind of tropical wave down here, right in the main development region of the Atlantic that is going to have that potential to develop into potentially a tropical depression, storm, or maybe even a hurricane within the next 10 days. And I'll tell you, the current steering flow looks like this will very likely be a threat to the United States in some way, shape, or form, whether that's a direct hit or whether that's just offshore with some rip current problems. We'll definitely take a look at, but this Bermuda high is definitely out there and it's cranking things westbound here. That is going to include this tropical wave. So that's kind of the big playmaker on the field here, but I will also notice this cluster of storms off the East Coast right now. This is also going to try to develop into some low pressure, not, so much tropical, more of a hybrid low, but that could bring some problems to the Northeast as soon as the next couple of days. So again, a couple different areas we're watching for here for the potential of that tropical development in the Atlantic. So things stayed quiet for most of July outside of Beryl, but to end it and to start August, things unfortunately look to be taking a turn right back towards the busier side of things. Now, taking a look at this tropical wave a little more in depth this morning, and I'll even move my head out of the way so we can see this a little bit better here. Again, right here is the wave in question, and again, it's kind of this big, just long wave that is, not very organized right now, but this just came off the coast of Africa not very long ago, just a couple days ago, and you'll even notice right behind it, we have the potential of more waves kind of, again, moving from the African coastline and into this intertropical convergence zone and this main development region of the Atlantic that is so often guilty of bringing us these big-time storms. So, again, right now it's a disorganized wave, nothing to, get too excited about just looking at satellite, but all indications are that that will likely change here as we go through the next 7 to 10 days. And the National Hurricane Center now agrees with that assumption. They say, well, you know what? This guy's got a 30% chance of developing, or I should say girl, because the next name on the list would be Debbie. So should this develop, this would be either tropical storm or potentially Hurricane Debbie. Once this develops, if it does. So again, next 48 hours, 0% chance of development, as I just showed you, not very organized. But once we get 5 to 7 to maybe 10 days out, development is a lot more likely as this gets near the Antilles and eventually towards Hispaniola, and eventually even looking at Cuba and the Bahamas in the general track of this low. So again, we've got some time to figure things out, but know that the models have really shifted overnight. We've been talking a couple days now. The Europeans been excited about this one. Well, now the GFS and our Canadian model have jumped on board and are showing tropical development in at least the operational runs. And I'll talk about that a little bit more here a tad bit later into the video. All right. So again, we have this wave right now, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is ready to go. In fact, it's going to have some obstacles to deal with. I'll draw again. Here's that wave, or just kind of the big area of showers and storms out here in the Atlantic. But this big area of yellow and even orange you're seeing on your map, this is dry Saharan dust that got pushed off of Africa a week or so ago and is kind of traveling right in front and north of this tropical wave. So it's going to need some time before it can develop. It's going to be fighting this dry air a little bit, also a little bit of wind shear, and in the earlier stages of these tropical systems, whenever there are these open waves, often it takes a bit more time to organize than when you have a defined core. I know oftentimes the past couple of years, We've seen these storms that have done this rapid intensification. That's a lot more difficult whenever you don't have an established course. So it's going to take time for this to get its act together. And that, again, is why nothing is expected in the next 48 hours. But once we get 7 days out or so, things could quickly change here. And not for the better. So let's go ahead and start diving into some model guidance here. We will start with the European model. I think everyone's favorite, probably. At least oftentimes that's what people say. And again, this was the first model to sniff this storm out. So generally, you kind of want to lean towards that model just because it's already been handling the idea of this better now that the other models are kind of trending towards it. So let's take a look at that here. This is the last day of July. This is July 31st or next Wednesday. So again, only about 5 days or so from now. And also I will add in the top here, I've added a little, well, let me see if I can kind of point at it here. Yeah, at the top there, we've got a time box, and right to the left of that shows the date and the time that this model is forecasting for. It's in Eastern time, but this is going to be so far out there, whether this is 8 a.m. or 8 p.m., we really just don't know. But either way, again, here we go, the end of July, and you'll notice on the European model, we've got some low pressure developing here, and this is that wave. Now, at this point, the wave has had, a good 5 days or so to kind of better organize itself, compact itself a little bit more, and likely, again, this will be near the northern part of the Antilles, about the same latitude as Puerto Rico, come next Wednesday. Now, what happens next on the European model is where things kind of begin to get interesting. You'll notice this continues to stay an open wave even into August 1st, but as we get deeper into this model run, again, this is going from August 1st into August 2nd, this wave is kind of moving near Hispaniola, just north of it, and eventually this develops into a low pressure system with a closed low by the end of next week. So again, this is about 7-8 days from now. On the European model, this is the first couple days of August, and here we go. We've got a low pressure forming right over portions of the Bahamas. And what happens next is this low pressure begins to strengthen pretty quickly. And here we go next Saturday, August 3rd, we've got low pressure, about tropical storm strength here, right over the Bahamas, just off the east coast of South Florida here. And then eventually this storm pulls up near the Gulf Stream, strengthens into a hurricane. And then about 10 days or so from now, August 5th, going into the beginning of not this week, but the next week, we've got a hurricane just off the Carolina coastline, and then eventually working kind of up and out to sea. So again, this is the latest run of the European operational run. So this is just one, big look at kind of a bunch of ensembles, or really just one ensemble technically is how it works. But again, this is just one model, so take it with a grain of salt. But the European has been showing this for at least a couple days now. Now let's jump to the GFS model, our other big model that you hear a lot about, or the American model, some people call it. Same thing though, just a different name. We're going to start this at the same time, July 31st, next Wednesday. Here we go. We've got a tropical low trying to form out of that wave here, again, near the Antilles, about the same latitude as Puerto Rico. And here we go. Here comes that wave. Now, on the GFS model, it's a little bit further south, but also develops a little quicker here. You'll notice this really turns into a developed low pressure by next Thursday, or this is even really next Wednesday night into next Thursday, as it moves towards Puerto Rico. Now, right now, if I'm in Puerto Rico or if I'm in the Antilles, I'm not super worried. I don't think the storm's going to have quite enough time to develop into anything severe. Now, could it be a tropical storm at this time? Sure. But hurricane status, or especially major hurricane status, seems very unlikely at this point, at this time frame. But either way, the GFS tracks this right over Puerto Rico, begins to develop it into a tropical storm the middle of next week into later next week, rides just north of Hispaniola, and again takes that track between Cuba and the Bahamas by next Friday, August 2nd. And eventually, again, rides the northern coast of Cuba and develops into a hurricane within 7 days. So this is next Saturday, August 3rd, 1 week from today. The GFS has a hurricane just off, the coast of Cuba, kind of between the Keys and Cuba. And there it goes, shoots the gap into the Gulf. And next thing you know, we've got a strengthening storm, a hurricane, a strong one, maybe a major hurricane moving up the west coast of Florida between 7 and 10 days from now. And then would make landfall here, and then eventually kind of move up into the southeast. So, again, just one model run, different than the European, but shows the same general idea. Tropical development that has the chance to strengthen and impact the United States, very possible here. within the next 7 to 10 days. So that's something obviously we're going to want to watch. We're going to need to watch it. But right now, it's way too soon to discuss any impacts. We're still just trying to figure out, where is the center of this thing going to form and where is it going to go? But again, the models have trended in the direction overnight that suggests we are more likely to see tropical development. All right, I'm going to show you one more model here. Might as well show them all to you. This is the Canadian model, or the GEM, or the CMC model. Again, you'll hear different names, but either way, this is another weather model, and we're going to start it again at the exact same time here, Wednesday morning, July 31st. So again, kind of right on board with all the other models. Tropical wave on the northern side of the Antilles, working westbound, west-northwestbound, I should say. But on the CMC model, again, kind of starts like the GFS, takes a little bit more of a southern track. It hits Puerto Rico, still an open wave, also moving into Hispaniola as an open wave, and then develops in the Caribbean, funnily enough, very different than the other models, although also not really in the grand scheme of things, Saturday morning, August 2nd. So again, just to bring you back, this location here, this kind of orange dot, that's the European model. This pink dot is the GFS model, and then this yellow dot, or where we have this low pressure, is the Canadian model. So all three developing a tropical system, but in different locations. And all things considered, a spread like this is pretty common for a week to 8 days out. So the model's not in terrible disagreement here, but it's gonna, pay huge dividends on which model is right at where it's at this point. And honestly, we probably won't get a better idea of that until a low kind of finally closes off and forms within, the next 7 days or so. So again, that's the Canadian model. Moving this ahead, again, this kind of shoots the gap between the Yucatan and Cuba instead of Florida and Cuba. And then the Canadian brings us into the Gulf, and we've got a hurricane back kind of near where Beryl was almost about 10 days from now. So different locations on all three models. The European, again, kind of has a southeast coast scraper. The GFS is the west coast of Florida, and then the Canadian is more of a western Gulf storm. So as you can tell here, a lot of time to decipher where this storm is going to go, but all indications are getting more aligned that we are going to see something develop. It's just a matter of where and how strong it's going to be. All right, so why are we likely to see this development? Well, this is the GFS model, again, kind of starting at the same time frame here. And here we go, this green area on your map, that is our tropical wave at this point. Again, Wednesday, July 31st, same place we've been starting. And you'll notice what happens as we move this ahead into time. That dry air, it's still there, but it is less impactful. If you look at the right-hand side of your screen, this kind of yellow box I drew, see how dry that air is compared to the general air around this low pressure. It's much more manageable. So that's going to make it easier for this storm to want to form as it kind of gets into this more favorable environment. Also, wind shear. As of right now, and I'm going to go ahead and preface this by saying wind shear is really tough to forecast this far out. So it just is. Unfortunately, the models struggle with wind shear sometimes in the short range, let alone a week or so out. But right now, the indications are as we get further out ahead into time, wind shear in this general area will begin to relax compared to what the storm will likely see a little bit earlier on. So a more favorable environment, again, about 7 days from now, probably even I guess really just 7 days in general or so, we're going to see a much more favorable environment for this storm, and thus, again, development will be more likely. Now, obviously, if this is tracking right over Hispaniola and right over Cuba, then it's going to run into its own land interaction and friction problems. But wind shear-wise and dry air-wise, things look to become more favorable in the 7-day time frame. Also, sea surface temperatures are off the charts, and we'll show you that here kind of in a moment. But before we do that, let's take a look at some ensembles. We will start with the European ensembles. This is now through 10 days. So again, if you see the top forecast hour 240 or August 6th, 2024, obviously, and you'll notice big time signal here for some sort of storm in this box. Let me pick a different color that you can see a little bit easier probably. But again, right in here. So again, some of these members have this more off the southeast coast and curving. Some of them take it right into Florida. Some of them, again, even get it back out here into portions of the western Gulf of Mexico. So, different solutions on all of these models, but or all of these ensembles, I should say. But again, a very strong signal there that we could see something develop. Now, the flip side of that coin, the GFS, which I just showed you, that had kind of the scariest output, if you will, with that forecast right into Florida. This is the GFS ensembles from this morning, and you'll notice Yeah, not a lot going on here. So we're gonna need still a lot of time to iron details out, but no, the operational runs are at least shifting towards that European ensemble mean that has been there for a couple of days, which tells me as a forecaster that's kind of the trend, and the trend is always your friend. So we'll see what happens here. Obviously, we've got time to keep watching. But a lot of forecast models are now picking up on this being a very real possibility. All right, so what is driving the steering current of this? And again, funnily enough, we'll start right here at the exact same time. A big thing at 500 millibars, or right in the middle part of the atmosphere where a lot of that steering is happening, we've got a very strong high pressure, or Bermuda high, as we often call it in meteorology. And the flow around this wants to send things westbound, but on the edge of it, it wants to curve things northbound. So, how strong is this high pressure? How far east is it? How far west is it? All of that is going to play a big role in exactly where future Debbie would go. And again, we move this ahead into time and watch what happens as we get to the beginning of August. You might be thinking, well, this entire thing is orange, this entire thing is high pressure. This is really going to go westbound. Well, not quite. You got to pay attention to the lines here and what they're doing. And right here into the southeastern United States, we've got some troughing going on, which helps to pick up these hurricanes and kind of break up that Bermuda high a little bit. And that would help to, again, try to curve this storm north. Now, for this to be a week to 10 days away, it is just way too soon to know exactly how strong this trough is going to be, exactly where it's going to be. Again, that trough could be positioned over here, and the storm could really curve out to sea, or it could be positioned over here, and this thing doesn't really pull north until it gets pretty deep into the Gulf. So, again, a lot of possibilities, the range of possibilities are still big right now. But that's the general, steering current that is going to lead this storm ahead. And you'll notice that break in the ridge really kind of shows up here again about a week or so from now. And then again, weakness here in the southeast would indicate, or I guess I should have drawn that the other way, really. Weakness in the southeast would indicate that a storm would pull north around that area. And again, obviously would be a problem for somebody. So, as we get a little bit closer, we'll have more details. But one thing that I do know is the ocean is plenty hot enough for a hurricane right now. These are temperature anomalies at the surface of the ocean here in the Atlantic. So the warmer colors on your screen indicate that temperatures are above what they should be this time of year. The blue colors, which there's not much on this map, obviously, but that would indicate temperatures are cooler than they should be. And really, the entire Atlantic Ocean is running above average. And kind of the general path that this storm would be taking, again, it's all orange. So sea surface temperatures will not be a problem for development. If anything, it will, really enhance it and, be able to be one of those catalyst ingredients that maybe, dry air or wind shear isn't that big of a deal because the ocean is hot enough. Hurricanes are very sensitive creatures, so we'll have some time to figure that out, and absolutely will as we get a little bit closer. Alrighty, now let's talk very briefly on some more short-term things. That was what could happen with Debbie here in the future. What about what's going on right now? Well, it's more of the same for a lot of folks. A lot of rain ongoing out here into the Gulf states, specifically the Gulf Coast of Texas, which I feel like we've been saying for the better part of a month now. But it's been a good week or two of very heavy rain down there, and unfortunately, flooding again going to be a concern. Also seeing some rain up into Arkansas and into the Ozarks. Mississippi, the Memphis area, rather, Little Rock, seeing some rain. But one big thing I do want you to notice is look at the Carolinas this morning, or this afternoon, depending on when you're watching this. Much drier than it has been. A lot of those showers and storms now working offshore, and drier air is going to begin to funnel down the backside of the Appalachia chain this afternoon and into tomorrow as well. And it's going to feel much nicer than it has. It's going to be a lot drier than it has. So again, some good news definitely for some folks here in that realm of things. Now, showing you some models here, we'll show you the NAM for the next couple of days. Again, getting into this afternoon, we've got some, scattered showers through portions of the southeast, but the mid-Atlantic and the northeast, it's going to be a beautiful day, about as nice as you could probably ask for the middle of July. So get out there, enjoy it, while we have it, because unfortunately next week it looks to again get muggy, and obviously if we have a hurricane to track, that'll impact the forecast in its own way later next week. But again, today, tomorrow, going to still have some scattered showers into portions of the southeast, specifically the mid-south. The Carolinas less so, but that'll be something we watch. Another thing we watch going into Sunday, Here we go, Sunday afternoon, a couple things. One, obviously, this little curlicue just off the coast of New England is potential low pressure that I talked about at the beginning of the video. Looks to try to develop here, and should it, could bring some increased rain chances towards the northeast during the beginning of next week. Also, another thing to know is looking at these isobars, flow out of the Gulf is once again going to come back in full force, starting out towards Texas, Louisiana, up the Mississippi River Valley, and then eventually working eastbound throughout the coming week. So again, the next 2 days are going to be nice in the northeast and southeast, but after that, we get here into Monday and the start of next week, and showers and storms once again overtake just about everyone in the east. Now, doesn't mean it's going to be raining for everyone, but everyone's probably going to have at least a shot at it as we get into early next week. And again, we've got this little low pressure that could try to bring some problems into New England. We've got this own complex of storms that could try to cross back into some areas that have already been rainy. We'll obviously have a couple days to forecast that for you and give you the latest. But the good news, dry air is here today. This is this afternoon. And again, probably add about 5 degrees or so to these dew point values. This is underdone a little bit, just how the GFS rolls, unfortunately. But either way, still comfortable in the northeast, comfortable into West Virginia, northeastern Kentucky, Ohio, into Virginia itself. But by the time we get into Sunday afternoon, northeast and even down into the mid-Atlantic, look at this backdoor cold front swinging on through, bringing in that nicer, cooler, drier air. It's going to feel great. So again, get out there, enjoy it while we have it, because here we go into next week, and those dew points come back in full force. This is next Tuesday. Again, just muggy and not very fun for anybody. So that's the unfortunate news there. As for the long-range forecast, 6 to 10 days out, the entire country just about is likely going to be at or above average in the temperature department, and rain chances, again, are going to be slightly above average in the east, especially should we get some tropical moisture to try to funnel in there, which obviously, would make sense given this kind of bullseye over the southeast. But either way, afternoon thunderstorm chances and kind of these complex of storms will be a problem in its own right to kind of watch out for here in the long run. Alrighty, folks, I appreciate you hanging in there. Again, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, like the video, and maybe share it with a friend that you think might find it interesting. And if you're watching in the southeast, again, just stay tuned. You don't need to be worried right now by any means, but you do need to have an eye to some forecasting here. And even if that's not me, find somebody you like to get your information from as we go throughout the next week or two. And really, obviously, throughout the end of hurricane season, which we still have a good 2 or 3 months of. So with that said, though, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Saturday. Get out there, enjoy it, and I'll see you all next time.